The emergency signal cut through space like a scream in the night. It traveled across star systems, bouncing from relay station to relay station, until it reached every corner of the known galaxy. The message was simple, desperate, and terrifying. The people were dying and they needed help. Ambassador stood in the great circular chamber of the Galactic Council, her four eyes fixed on the holographic display that floated in the center of the room. She was a species known for their calm nature and their ability to see things that others missed. Her pale blue skin seemed to glow in the dim light of the chamber, and her long fingers trembled slightly as she watched the images being broadcast from Velar Prime. The planet was beautiful, or at least it had been beautiful. They had spent thousands of years building their civilization, creating towers of living crystal that caught the light of their twin suns and scattered it into rainbows. Their cities were works of art, carefully designed to exist in harmony with the natural world around them. They themselves were gentle creatures, tall and thin, with skin that shimmered like precious stones and eyes that held nothing but kindness. They had no weapons. They had no military. In all their long history, they had never fought a war. They believed that violence was a disease of the mind, a sickness that could be cured through understanding and compassion. When they joined the Galactic Council 500 years ago, they had been welcomed as examples of what a truly civilized species could become. Now their cities were burning. They had come without warning. Their ships had appeared in the sky above Velar Prime like a swarm of hungry insects, blocking out the light of the suns. There were raiders, pirates, parasites who traveled from world to world taking whatever they wanted. They were creatures, with hard black shells and multiple limbs that ended in sharp claws. Their ships were grown rather than built, organic vessels that pulsed with sickly bioluminescent light. They had tried to communicate with them. They had sent messages of peace, offers of trade, requests for understanding. They had responded by opening fire on the capital city. Watched as crystal towers collapsed into dust. She saw running through streets filled with smoke and fire, their beautiful clothes torn and dirty, their eyes wide with terror. She saw ground troops marching through the ruins, grabbing anyone they could find and dragging them toward the waiting transport ships. They did not kill their victims. That would have been kinder. Instead, they harvested them. They took living beings from conquered worlds and processed them for biological resources. Organs, tissues, genetic material, everything that could be used or sold was extracted and packaged. There were merchants of flesh, and they had come to Velar Prime to collect their goods. "How many ships?" asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Council member shifted his massive body and consulted the data streams flowing across his personal display. Was a species that resembled Earth bears in their general shape, though they stood nearly 3 meters tall and were covered in thick fur. His voice was a deep rumble that seemed to shake the air itself. 217 confirmed vessels, reported. The main swarm is in orbit with approximately 40 ships deployed for ground operations. They have established a defensive perimeter around the planet. Nothing is getting in or out. "And our fleet?" asked another council member, unnamed. His body was mostly composed of tentacles, which he used to operate multiple computer terminals simultaneously. His skin changed color with his emotions, and right now it was a deep, worried purple. "The nearest council battle group is 18 standard rotations away," said. "Even at maximum speed, they cannot arrive in time." "In time for what?" asked, though she already knew the answer. "The work quickly. Based on their previous raids, they will complete their harvest within 4 rotations. By the time our fleet arrives, there will be nothing left to save." A heavy silence fell over the chamber. Around the circular room, representatives from dozens of species sat in their designated seats, each one processing the information in their own way. Some showed anger, others showed fear, and more than a few showed nothing at all. The galaxy was a big place, and Velar Prime was far from their own. It was easy to feel sympathy for them, but sympathy would not save them. closed her two upper eyes and tried to think. The Galactic Council had been formed to prevent exactly this kind of disaster. The member species had agreed to defend each other, to share their resources and their strength so that no one would have to face threats alone. But the Council was slow and careful, built on compromise and negotiation. It was not designed for rapid response to emergencies. They were going to die because help could not reach them in time. It was that simple and that terrible. "We are receiving another transmission," announced suddenly. His tentacles froze over his terminals, and his skin shifted to a shade of pale yellow that had never seen before. "It is a response to the distress signal." "From whom?" demanded. "Which member species?" Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was strange, almost hollow. "The humans." The chamber erupted in noise. Every species present began talking at once, their voices mixing together in a chaotic storm of sound. Felt her hearts begin to beat faster. The humans. Of course it would be the humans. Humanity had only been a spacefaring species for about 200 years. In the grand scale of galactic history, they were infants, barely out of their cradles. They had made contact with the wider galaxy just 40 years ago, when one of their exploration vessels had stumbled into space and nearly caused an interstellar incident. The humans had been surprised to discover that they were not alone in the universe. The rest of the galaxy had been surprised to discover that the humans existed at all. Earth, the human, was classified as a Category 12 death world. This was the highest category possible, reserved for planets so dangerous that most species considered them completely uninhabitable. The gravity was crushing by galactic standards. The atmosphere was filled with a corrosive gas called oxygen. The weather patterns were violent and unpredictable. The planet was home to countless species of predators, parasites, and poisonous creatures, all of which competed for resources in an endless cycle of death and rebirth. And somehow, impossibly, humans had not only survived on this nightmare world, they had thrived. They had risen to dominance, conquering every environment their planet had to offer. They had survived ice ages and plagues, wars and famines. They had split the atom, walked on their moon, and reached out to the stars. They were predators, not just in the biological sense, though that was certainly true. Humans were pursuit predators evolved to chase their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion, but they were also predators in a deeper, more fundamental way. They looked at the universe and saw not obstacles but challenges to be overcome. They did not accept limits, did not acknowledge that anything was impossible. When faced with a problem, they simply kept attacking it until it was solved or they were dead. The Galactic Council had accepted humanity's application for membership with great reluctance. Many species had argued against it, warning that the humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable, too dangerous to be trusted. But the humans had followed all the proper procedures, had signed all the required treaties, had promised to behave themselves. And there was another factor that nobody wanted to talk about openly. The humans had military technology that rivaled or exceeded anything else in the galaxy. It was better to have them inside the council than outside it. "Where are the humans?" asked, cutting through the noise of the chamber with her clear voice. Checked his displays again. "There is a human colony on a station called Horizon. It is approximately 3 rotations from Velar Prime." "3 rotations," repeated. "That is still too slow. They will complete their harvest before." "The humans have already launched," interrupted. "According to the transmission, they departed Horizon Station 17 hours ago. They are traveling at speeds that our sensors classify as impossible." Another wave of murmuring swept through the chamber. Felt a chill run down her spine. Impossible speeds. That was the thing about humans. They did not believe in impossible. They simply found ways to make the impossible happen. "How many ships?" she asked. 12. The chamber fell silent again, but this time the silence was different. It was the silence of disbelief. 12 ships, said slowly. Against 200, the humans have gone mad. The humans, said a quiet voice from the back of the chamber, have done their math. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. It was an elderly named, a species that resembled large insects with metallic shells. They were famous for their analytical abilities and their complete lack of emotional expression. His voice was flat and mechanical, but his words carried weight. I have studied human military history, continued. It is a subject that I find both fascinating and disturbing. Humans have a long tradition of winning battles that they should have lost. They do not fight the way other species fight. They do not follow the rules that we consider obvious and natural. Instead, they make their own rules and they force their enemies to play by them. 12 ships cannot defeat 200, insisted. It is mathematically impossible. I am a mathematician, replied, and I have learned that when humans are involved, mathematics must be flexible. Turned back to the holographic display. The images from Velar Prime were still streaming in, showing the ongoing destruction of a civilization. But now there was something else on the display as well, a small cluster of dots moving rapidly across the map, heading straight for the swarm. 12 ships, 12 human ships, crewed by predators from a death world, racing to save strangers they had never met. Did not know what was going to happen, but she knew, with absolute certainty, that she was about to witness something that would change the galaxy forever. The leader of the human rescue mission was a woman named Admiral. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, a heavy cruiser called the Relentless, and watched the stars streak past on the main. At 53 years old, she had spent more than half her life in the United Earth Navy. She had fought in wars and negotiated peace treaties. She had commanded rescue missions and combat operations. She had seen the best and worst that humanity had to offer. Right now, she was seeing the worst that the galaxy had to offer. The tactical display next to her command chair showed the swarm in brutal detail. 200 organic ships, each one bristling with weapons and filled with creatures that viewed other intelligent beings as nothing more than resources to be exploited. "Status report," she said. Her voice was calm and controlled, the voice of someone who had given orders in situations far more dangerous than this one. Commander Danny Vance, her executive officer, looked up from his console. He was a tall man in his early 40s, with dark skin and eyes that missed nothing. He had served under for 7 years, and he knew her well enough to recognize the cold anger that lurked beneath her professional exterior. "All ships in formation, Admiral," Vance reported. "Engineering reports that we are pushing the engines past recommended limits, but they will hold. Weapons systems are fully charged and ready for combat. The crew is prepared." Nodded. Around her, the bridge crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. These were professionals, men and women who had trained for years to perform their duties under the most extreme conditions. They did not panic, did not waste time with unnecessary words or actions. They simply did their jobs. Communications said, "Any response from the—" Lieutenant Marsh shook her head. She was young, barely 30, but she had earned her position through skill and dedication. Her fingers moved across her console with practiced speed. "Nothing, Admiral. They are ignoring our hails. Either they do not consider us a threat or they do not care." "Probably both," replied. "They are used to dealing with prey, not predators. They have no frame of reference for what we are." "They will learn," Vance said quietly. "Yes," agreed, "they will." She turned to look at the tactical display again, studying the layout of the swarm. 200 ships. It was a lot, but she had seen the specifications for vessels. Their ships were organic, grown rather than built, which gave them certain advantages in terms of self-repair and adaptation. But organic ships were also slow and fragile compared to the metal monsters that humans built. Weapons were primarily acid-based, effective against other organic targets, but much less effective against the hardened alloys that made up human hull plating. More importantly, they had never fought a real war. They were scavengers, parasites who preyed on the weak and defenseless. They chose their targets carefully, attacking only those who could not fight back. They had no experience with enemies who could and would hurt them. Humans, on the other hand, had been fighting wars since before they learned to write. Their entire history was a long, bloody story of conflict, from the earliest tribal skirmishes to the devastating world wars that had nearly destroyed their civilization. They had invented weapons that could shatter cities, developed tactics that could defeat enemies 10 times their number. They had fought each other with such ferocity that the rest of the galaxy had trouble believing that they were still alive. But humans did not only fight each other. They also protected each other. For all their violence, for all their aggression, humans had a deep and powerful instinct to defend those who could not defend themselves. They formed bonds with strangers, risked their lives for people they had never met, and felt genuine rage when they saw innocent beings suffering. It was this instinct that had driven to launch her patrol group the moment the distress signal came in. She had not waited for orders from Earth Command. She had not requested permission from the Galactic Council. She had simply gathered her ships and started moving, because somewhere out there, millions of people were dying and she could help them. The consequences of her decision could wait. Right now, the only thing that mattered was reaching Velar Prime before it was too late. "Admiral," Marsh said suddenly, "we are receiving a transmission from the planetary governor. He is requesting to speak with you directly." "Put him through." The mane flickered and a face appeared. He was male, or at least assumed he was male based on the briefing documents she had read. Gender was not immediately obvious to humans. His crystalline eyes were wide with fear, and his delicate features were streaked with what appeared to be tears. Behind him, she could see smoke and fire, the ruins of what had once been a beautiful building. "Human vessels," he said, his voice trembling. "I am governor of the Central Authority. I received word that you are coming to help us. Please, I beg you, please hurry. They are taking our people. They are taking our children. Our defenses failed, our cities are burning, we have nothing left. Please." His voice broke and he covered his face with his hands, felt her jaw tighten. She had seen a lot of terrible things in her career, but there was something about this that hit her harder than most. They were so gentle, so innocent. They had done nothing to deserve this. They had simply existed, and that had been enough to make them targets. "Governor," she said, keeping her voice firm and steady, "my name is Admiral of the United Earth Navy. I need you to listen to me very carefully. Can you do that?" The governor lowered his hands and looked at her. His eyes were filled with desperate hope. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes, I am listening." "Good. I need you to tell me exactly what is happening on your planet. How many of your people are still alive? Where are they? What are they doing right now?" Took a shaky breath and tried to compose himself. "The main attack focused on our capital city, Crystalline. Perhaps 4 million people were living there when they arrived. Many have died. Many more have been captured. The survivors are hiding in the underground bunkers beneath the city center. The bunkers were built long ago before we joined the council, when we still feared the dangers of space. We never thought we would need them." "How long can the bunkers hold out?" "The doors are strong, but they have been bringing in cutting equipment. At the current rate, they will breach the main entrance within 12 hours. After that," he could not finish the sentence. Did some quick calculations in her head. 12 hours. Her patrol group would arrive in approximately 50 hours at their current speed. That was not good enough. "We need more speed," she said, turning to Vance. "Talk to engineering. Tell them I need everything they have." Vance nodded and started issuing orders into his communicator. Turned back to the governor. "Governor, I want you to do something for me. I want you to go to your people, to the survivors in those bunkers, and I want you to tell them that help is coming. Tell them that the humans are on their way. Tell them to hold on, to stay strong, to not give up hope. Can you do that?" But you are only 12 ships," said. "They have 200, how can you possibly?" Governor leaned forward, and there was something in her eyes that made Fall silent. It was not anger exactly, though anger was part of it. It was something older and deeper, something that had been burned into the human species by millions of years of evolution on a world that never stopped trying to kill them. It was the look of a predator who had found its prey. "I do not care how many ships they have," said. "I do not care what weapons they carry or what defenses they have built. What I care about is that there are 4 million innocent people on your planet who are going to die unless someone stops the... And I am going to stop them. Do you understand me? I am going to stop them, and I am going to make them pay for every life they have taken. That is not a promise, Governor. That is a fact." Stared at her for a long moment. In his eyes could see something changing. The fear was still there, but it was no longer alone. There was something else now, something that looked almost like hope. "I understand," he said finally. "I will tell my people. Thank you, Admiral, thank you." The transmission ended, and the return to its view of the stars. Sat back in her command chair and allowed herself a moment to feel the weight of what she had just promised. 12 ships against 200. It was not impossible, but it was going to be difficult. Very difficult. "Admiral," Vance said, returning to her side. "Engineering says they can give us another 15% thrust, but it will put serious strain on the reactor cores. We will need major repairs when this is over." "Acknowledge to do it." "Yes, ma'am," Vance hesitated. "Admiral, I have to ask, how are we going to do this? The numbers." "The numbers do not matter," said. "They are used to fighting herbivores and pacifists. They have never faced a real enemy. They have never faced humans." She stood up and walked to the front of the bridge, looking out at the endless stars streaming past. "When I was a little girl," she said, "my grandfather used to tell me stories about Earth, about the animals that lived there, the predators and the prey. He told me about wolves, about how they hunted in packs, how they could bring down animals 10 times their size. He told me about how the prey animals feared the wolves, how they would run at the first sign of danger." She turned to face her crew. They were all watching her, listening intently. "But then he told me something else. He told me about what happened when the wolves were gone. Without predators, the prey animals beyond control. They ate all the plants, destroyed the forests, ruined the land. The whole ecosystem collapsed because there was nothing to keep it in balance." Walked slowly around the bridge, meeting the eyes of each crew member in turn. "They think they are the wolves of this galaxy. They think they are the predators and everyone else is prey. But they are wrong. They are scavengers, parasites, cowards who only attack those who cannot fight back. They are not wolves. They are hyenas, jackals, vultures." She returned to her command chair and sat down. "We are the wolves. We are the predators that the galaxy does not know it needs. And today, we are going to teach them what happens when they threaten the innocent in front of a true hunter." The bridge crew was silent for a moment. Then, one by one, they began to smile. They were not pleasant smiles. They were the smiles of people who had just been given permission to do what they did best. "All hands," said, opening a channel to the entire fleet. "This is Admiral. In approximately 40 hours, we will engage the swarm above Velar Prime. Our mission is simple: destroy the enemy and save the civilian population. I will not lie to you. The odds are not in our favor. We are outnumbered and far from home." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But we are humans. We do not care about odds. We do not accept defeat. When someone threatens the innocent, we do not run, we do not hide, we do not negotiate. We fight. We fight until the threat is eliminated or we are dead. That is who we are. That is what we do." Another pause. Around her, the bridge crew was nodding, their faces set with determination. "They are counting on us. The entire galaxy is watching us. Let us show them what humanity is capable of. Let us show them that when humans make a promise, they keep it. Let us show them that there is still justice in this universe, and that it comes with and plasma lances." She could hear the crew responding now, voices rising throughout the ship and across the fleet. They were ready. They were eager. They were human. All ships maintain maximum speed. Weapons officers begin final preparations. Medical teams stand by for casualties. This is going to be a fight, people. Make it a good one. She closed the channel and sat back in her chair. Vance was looking at her with an expression that mixed respect with something like awe. "That was quite a speech, Admiral," he said. "It was the truth," replied. "Now let us make sure we can back it up." Far across the galaxy, in the great chamber of the Galactic Council, Ambassador watched the human fleet's progress with growing fascination. The 12 small dots on the holographic display were moving faster than should have been possible, cutting through space like knives through fabric. They would arrive at Velar Prime in less than 2 days at this rate. "Incredible," murmured, his tentacles dancing across his console as he analyzed the sensor data. "Their propulsion technology is far more advanced than we believed. These speeds should be tearing their ships apart." "The humans build their ships to withstand punishment," observed. "Their engineers assume that anything they create will eventually be pushed beyond its limits. They design for failure, and in doing so, they create machines that rarely fail." Made a rumbling sound deep in his chest. "It does not matter how fast they travel. When they arrive, they will still be facing 200 enemy vessels. Speed will not save them in a firefight." "Perhaps not," said, "but I would not be so quick to dismiss them. The humans have survived on a world that should have killed them. They have risen to the stars despite every obstacle. They are here now, racing to save strangers they have never met. Whatever else we may think of them, we cannot deny their courage." "Courage and foolishness often look the same," replied. "The difference is only visible in hindsight." The conversation was interrupted by a sudden flurry of activity on console. The skin shifted through several colors in rapid succession, before settling on a deep orange that did not recognize. "Something is happening," announced. "The swarm is reacting to the approaching human ships. They are laughing." "Laughing," repeated. "They communicate through a form of collective consciousness, that links all members of a swarm. We have intercepted their transmissions. They are aware of the human fleet, and they find it amusing. The swarm leader has ordered his subordinates to ignore the humans and continue the harvest. He considers 12 ships to be beneath his notice." "Arrogance," said flatly. "They have never faced a serious challenge. They do not understand what is coming for them." "And what is coming for them?" asked. His metallic shell clicked softly as he considered the question. "I have studied human military history extensively. It is a field that most species find too disturbing to examine closely, but I believe it is essential to understanding what the humans are capable of." He turned to face the other council members, his compound eyes reflecting the light of the holographic display. "Humans have a concept called total war. It is the idea that when fighting an enemy, one should use every available resource, target every possible weakness, and continue the attack until the enemy is completely destroyed. Most species consider this approach to be barbaric, excessive, unnecessarily cruel. Humans consider it to be common sense." The chamber was very quiet, continued. "In their history, humans have faced enemies who outnumbered them badly. They have fought battles where victory seemed impossible, and yet, time and time again, they have won. Not through superior numbers or better equipment, but through sheer determination and a willingness to do whatever was necessary." He gestured toward the holographic display. "They think they are dealing with another weak, peaceful species like the. They expect the humans to fight the way other species fight, cautiously, defensively, trying to minimize their losses. They will be wrong. The humans will not try to minimize their losses. They will try to maximize the damage they inflict on the enemy. They will attack with everything they have, holding nothing back, and they will not stop until one side is completely destroyed." "You make them sound like monsters," said. "No," replied. "I make them sound like what they are, predators. the most successful predators in the known galaxy, and they have just made the mistake of threatening their prey. Looked at the display again. The human fleet was still hours away from Velar Prime, but she could already feel the tension building. Something was about to happen, something that would change everything. On the planet below, in the darkness of the underground bunkers, the survivors huddled together and waited for death. They had heard the governor's message, his words about the humans coming to save them. But it was hard to believe. They were everywhere, their ships blocking out the sky, their soldiers marching through the ruins of cities that had stood for thousands of years. How could 12 ships make a difference against so many? A young female named Lyra sat against the cold stone wall of the bunker, her arms wrapped around her 2 children. They were small, barely more than infants by standards, and they did not understand what was happening. They only knew that their home was gone, that their father was missing, that the world had become a place of fire and terror. "Mother," the older child whispered, "are we going to die?" Lyra did not know how to answer. She wanted to say no, wanted to promise that everything would be all right. But she had always believed in telling the truth, and the truth was that she did not know. They were cutting through the bunker doors. In a few hours, maybe less, they would break through. And then? She did not want to think about what would happen then. "The governor said that someone is coming to help us," she said finally. "Creatures called humans. They are on their way." "What are humans?" the younger child asked. Lyra tried to remember what she knew about humans. It was not much. They were a new species, recently arrived in the galactic community. They came from a planet called Earth, a world that was supposed to be very dangerous. They were predators, which meant they ate other animals to survive. The idea had always seemed strange and somewhat disturbing to Lyra, who had never eaten anything but plants and synthesized nutrients. But predators also meant something else. Predators were strong. Predators were fierce. Predators protected their territory and their families with violence if necessary. Maybe, just maybe, predators were exactly what they needed right now. "Humans are warriors," Lyra said, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. "They fight to protect the weak. They are coming to help us, and they will not let them hurt us anymore." "Promise?" the older child asked. Lyra hugged her children and looked up at the ceiling, as if she could see through the rock and metal to the stars beyond. "I promise," she said. She did not know if it was true, but in that moment, saying the words, she found that she believed them. Somewhere out there, 12 human ships were racing through the void, carrying warriors who had chosen to risk their lives for strangers. That had to mean something. That had to matter. For the first time since they had arrived, Lyra allowed herself to hope. Back on the Relentless, Admiral was in her ready room studying tactical data. The room was small and functional, with a desk, a few chairs, and walls covered with display screens. It was her private space, the place where she could think without interruption. The data on the screens was not encouraging. The swarm was well organized, with ships arranged in multiple layers of defense around the planet. Getting through to the surface would be difficult. Getting through without taking heavy casualties would be nearly impossible. But had not become an admiral by doing impossible things. She had become an admiral by figuring out how to make impossible things possible. "Computer," she said, "display historical data on combat tactics." The screens flickered and filled with information. Read through it carefully, looking for patterns, weaknesses, anything she could exploit. They were predictable, she realized. They always used the same basic strategy: overwhelm the enemy with numbers, absorb any losses, and keep attacking until the target was defeated. It was effective against smaller or weaker opponents, but it had a fatal flaw. They did not know how to deal with an enemy who fought back effectively. Their ships were designed for raiding, not for combat. Their weapons were meant to suppress resistance, not to destroy military targets. Their commanders had no experience with real warfare, only with the systematic destruction of defenseless populations. They were bullies, thought, And bullies always had the same weakness. They crumbled when someone stood up to them. She started making notes, sketching out a battle plan. The key was to hit hard and fast, to disrupt the formation before they could respond. If she could break their confidence, make them doubt their superiority, the whole swarm might fall apart. It was a risky plan. It depended on the reacting exactly the way she expected them to react. If she was wrong, her entire fleet would be destroyed. But if she was right... A chime sounded, interrupting her thoughts. "Admiral," came Vance's voice over the intercom. "We are receiving a transmission from Earth Command." Sighed, she had been expecting this. Put it through. The largest display screen flickered and a face appeared. It was Admiral Cole, the commander of Earth's home defense fleet and its immediate superior. He was an older man, with hair and a face lined by decades of service. His expression was carefully neutral, but could see the concern in his eyes. He said, "I just received word of your current mission. Care to explain what you think you're doing?" "Responding to a distress signal, sir, as per standing orders." "Standing orders do not authorize you to launch a unilateral military operation against a force that outnumbers you 20 to 1. "No, sir. But standing orders do authorize me to render assistance to any member species of the Galactic Council that is under attack. They are under attack. I am rendering assistance." Cole was quiet for a moment. "You know that the Council will not support this. They will say you acted without authorization, that you risked an interstellar incident." "With respect, sir, I do not care what the Council says. 4 million people are going to die unless someone helps them. Our fleet is the only one close enough to make a difference. What was I supposed to do? Sit and watch?" "You were supposed to request orders and wait for a response." "And while I was waiting, how many would have died? How many children would have been harvested by those monsters?" Shook her head. "I did not join the Navy to follow orders while innocent people suffered. I joined because I wanted to make a difference. This is my chance to make a difference, sir. I am not going to waste it." Cole studied her face for a long moment. Then slowly, his expression softened. "You always were stubborn. Even back at the academy, you never could accept that some battles were not worth fighting." "Every battle is worth fighting if innocent lives are at stake, sir. You taught me that." A ghost of a smile crossed Cole's face. "Did I? I do not remember being so idealistic." "You were, sir. You still are. That is why you are going to help me." Cole raised an eyebrow. "Am I?" "You are going to contact Earth Command and tell them that my mission is authorized. You are going to request reinforcements from any fleet elements in the region. And you are going to make sure that when this is over, my people are treated as heroes, not criminals." "That is a lot of assumptions." "Am I wrong?" Another long pause. Then Cole laughed, a short, surprised sound. "No," he admitted. "You are not wrong, damn you. You always could read me like a book." "It is a useful skill, sir." "Apparently." Cole's expression became serious again. "I will do what I can, but I cannot promise anything. The political situation is complicated. There are people on Earth who think we should stay out of galactic affairs entirely." "There are always people who want to stay out of everything, sir. They are usually the first ones to complain when problems show up on their doorstep." "True enough." Cole paused. "Be careful. You are good, but you are not invincible. They may be scavengers, but they are still dangerous. Do not let your confidence become arrogance." "I will keep that in mind, sir." "See that you do." Cole out. The screen went dark and sat back in her chair. That had gone better than she expected. Cole was a good man, and he understood what was at stake. He would do his best to support her, even if it meant taking political risks. But in the end, it did not matter what happened on Earth. What mattered was what happened at Velar Prime. In less than 40 hours, her fleet would arrive at the planet, and the real fight would begin. Stood up and walked to the small window that looked out into space. The stars were beautiful, countless points of light scattered across the infinite darkness. Somewhere out there, billions of beings went about their daily lives, completely unaware that a battle was about to be fought that would change the course of galactic history. She thought about the huddled in their bunkers, waiting for rescue. She thought about the confident in their superiority, unaware that death was coming for them. She thought about her own crew, brave men and women who had volunteered to risk their lives for strangers they would never meet. And she thought about what it meant to be human, to be a predator, yes, but also to be a protector, to have the power to destroy, but to choose instead to defend, to look at the universe and see not just enemies to be conquered, but friends to be made and innocents to be saved. That was what made humans different, she realized. Not their weapons or their technology, not their aggression or their cunning. What made humans special was their capacity for empathy, their ability to look at creatures from another world and see them as worthy of protection. They would never understand that. They saw other beings only as resources to be exploited. They could not imagine risking themselves for someone else's benefit. That was going to be their downfall. Smiled, a thin, cold expression that held no warmth but plenty of determination. "We are coming," she whispered to the stars. "Hold on, Velar Prime, we are coming." The human fleet continued on its course, 12 ships racing through the darkness toward a battle that would be remembered for centuries. Behind them, Earth spun peacefully in its orbit, billions of humans going about their lives, unaware of the sacrifice their brothers and sisters were about to make. Ahead of them, the swarm waited, confident and cruel, ready to complete their harvest and move on to their next target. And in the space between, in the vast emptiness that separated stars, something was building, something powerful and ancient and terrifying, something that the galaxy had almost forgotten existed. The wrath of humanity awakened at last. The Galactic Council continued to watch, their attention fixed on the holographic display that showed the human fleet's approach. Some of them were skeptical, believing that the humans were simply throwing their lives away in a pointless gesture. Others were curious, wondering if the humans really were as dangerous as the reports suggested. But a few of them, a very few, felt something else, something that might have been fear. Ambassador was one of them. She watched the display with all four of her eyes, her mind racing with possibilities and implications. If the humans succeeded, if they actually managed to defeat and save it would change everything. The galaxy would have to recognize humanity as a true power, a force to be reckoned with. And if the humans failed, if they were destroyed, their ships torn apart by the swarm, then the galaxy would learn a different lesson. It would learn that hope was fragile, that courage was not enough, that even the bravest heroes could fall before overwhelming force. Did not know which outcome she preferred. Both were terrifying in their own way. But she knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened at Velar Prime, nothing would ever be the same again. The hours passed slowly, each minute feeling like an eternity. On the Relentless, the crew worked and prepared, checking weapons, running simulations, saying quiet prayers to whatever gods they believed in. In the bunkers beneath Velar Prime, the survivors held each other close and tried not to think about what was coming. In the council chamber, the representatives of 100 worlds watched and waited, their fates tied to the actions of 12 small ships and the predators who crewed them. And in the darkness between stars, the human fleet flew on, carrying hope in one hand and death in the other. The battle for Velar Prime was about to begin. Admiral looked at the countdown timer on her display. 32 hours until arrival. 32 hours to finalize her plans, to prepare her crews, to steel herself for what was to come. She had faced death before. She had sent people to their deaths, and she had killed to protect herself and others. It was part of being a soldier, part of the burden that military officers carried. But this was different. This was not just a battle. This was a statement, a declaration to the entire galaxy that humanity would not stand by while the innocent suffered, that there was a price for cruelty and humans would be the ones to collect it. Closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, her expression was calm and focused. "All hands," she announced over the ship-wide intercom. "This is the Admiral. Begin final preparations for combat. We reach Velar Prime in 32 hours. When we arrive, we will show thee and the entire galaxy what happens when you mess with humanity's friends." A cheer rose up from somewhere deep in the ship, spreading quickly until it echoed through every corridor and compartment. The crew of the Relentless was ready. And so were the 11 other ships of the fleet. The Fury, the Wrath, the Vengeance, the Retribution, the Stalker, the Hunter, the Prowler, the Ghost, the Hope, the Mercy, and the Redemption. 12 ships with names that told the story of humanity's dual nature, their capacity for violence and their capacity for compassion. They were coming, and nothing in the galaxy was going to stop them. The stars continued to stream past, indifferent to the drama unfolding in their midst. They had seen empires rise and fall, species emerge and go extinct, wars fought and peace won. They would see much more before the universe finally went dark. But for now, in this moment, they bore witness to something special, something that might, in the long run of history, prove to be more important than anyone realized. They bore witness to humanity taking its first real step onto the galactic stage. And they bore witness to the beginning of the end for the Raiders. The countdown continued, 31 hours 30:29. The battle was coming, and the humans were ready.